How's it guys? Welcome back to that med guide. Today we're doing basic ventilation. If you know what tidal volume is, if you know what a minute volume is, if you know what peep is, and that sort of thing, then you can skip to the next video. But if you don't, then stay tuned. So we're going to be starting with basic ventilation and ventilators. So what's important to start off with is what is normal ventilation. So when you're breathing, the volume in your lungs increases. So the pressure decreases and so air rushes into your lungs. So it's a negative pressure ventilation because you're making a bigger volume and air rushes in. When we put you on a ventilator, that's turned upside down. What happens is that the ventilator pushes air into your lungs. And so it does kind of a reverse normal. So that has lots of effects on the body. Important to take into mind. The other thing that's important to clarify is tidal volume. So what is tidal volume? Well, that's the amount of air you're breathing now as you watch this. So that can be worked out as 6 to 8 moles or cc's of air per kilogram. So that's about 500 to 600 moles per breath for me. So when I take a breath, it's about 500 moles. So when you're on a ventilator, we kind of want to give you that same amount of volume, about 6 to 8 cc's or moles per breath. So there are really two kinds of ventilators. One is a pressure control and one is a volume control. Some ventilators can do both, but generally it's either pressure controlled or it is volume controlled. So a volume controlled ventilator is exactly that. I set how much volume I want to give you. So I work out your weight and I say, well, you weigh about 81, maybe 80, whatever the case is, and I want to give you 600 moles of tidal volume. So on the ventilator, you'll set your VT, which is your tidal volume, to 6 to 8 cc's or moles per ventilation. So that's how much air I get each breath. Then the next thing you're going to set is your IE ratio. So IE stands for inspiration and expiration. So your normal IE ratio, so how long do I breathe in and how long do I breathe out? Normal inspiration is 1 second and normal expiration is 2 seconds. So for every second you're breathing in, you're breathing out for 2 seconds. It's a ratio, not a time. The other setting you want to set up is your PEEP. So PEEP is positive end expiratory pressure. So positive air, it's the expiration. So when I am finished with breathing out, I still have positive air in my lung. Kind of like when you inflate a balloon and if you let out all the air in the balloon, it kind of flops over and it's empty. We don't want that in the lungs. So the positive end expiratory. So at the end of my breathing, I still have positive pressure in my lungs. So that's PEEP. Normal is 5. That's physiological PEEP, meaning it's the normal PEEP in your lungs. And then you want to set your maximum pressure, which is about 20, 25, 30, somewhere around there. Probably stick around 20. And then obviously your rate, your respirations, how fast you want the patient to breathe. So you want to aim for what is normal. So normally we are breathing 60 cc's per kilogram per minute. So that is your minute volume. So what is minute volume? Well, how much air do I breathe in a minute? So it's how fast I'm breathing times how much air I'm breathing. So I can work out that I need 60 moles per kg for me. That's 5 liters. So I can either breathe a tidal volume breath of 500 moles and I can breathe that 10 times in a minute and that's my tidal volume. I could breathe 1,000 moles in one breath and breathe 5 times in a minute and that also gives me 5 liters. So my minute volume is still normal. That's why it's important to work out minute volume, and that's also, it comes down to different ventilation strategies, is that you can decrease tidal volume if you increase your rate, or you can decrease rate and you can increase tidal volume, as long as you're getting the right minute volume. So then it also comes down to what is the definition of ventilation? So ventilation is not just the air moving into your lungs. That is oxygenation. That's getting your cells oxygen. But ventilation is getting the carbon dioxide out of your lungs. And then another setting on the ventilator is your percent of oxygen. So in the air, we're breathing 21%. And that can go all the way up to 100%. So you must also remember that it's not good to be on 100%, and if you can bring that down, you should. You'd only bring it down if your saturation is above 94. Obviously, if it's below 94, you want to give 100% oxygen until you have it above 94. The two settings on a ventilator that affect oxygenation is PEEP and your percent of oxygen, or your FiO2. The settings that affect ventilation is your minute volume, is how fast you're breathing and how much air you're breathing. Those are the things. If you make me breathe faster and you don't give me more percent oxygen, I won't get more oxygen. I actually just blow off more carbon dioxide. So it's important to realize that only the PEEP, so the positive end expiratory pressure, affect oxygenation, and your percent of oxygen affect your oxygenation, and where your tidal volume and your rate of breathing affect your ventilation. So there are two general ventilation strategies. There is a protective strategy for everyone, and then there is a obstructed strategy, so like asthma. So the protective strategy is that you must think of damaged lungs like baby lungs. They're small. So we try and decrease the tidal volume as much as we can. So with the protective strategy, we try and drop the tidal volume from 8 mils per kilogram down to 7, down to 6. As long as we're getting enough ventilation, you can keep dropping it down to about 6, because damaged lungs are baby lungs. So you want to keep smaller ventilations at a good rate, maybe 12, 15, making sure that your saturation is good, making sure that your EtCO2 is good. If you have a capnography of between 35 and 45, you're in a good place, with obviously a good blood pressure. And so if you have a protective lung strategy, you're wanting to be working on smaller tidal volumes so that you can then breathe faster, because you need to treat them like baby lungs. It's a thing to remember. When you have obstructive, like asthma, and there's air trapping, you want to have a much longer expiration. So if we're breathing out slowly, it means we can't breathe quickly, which means to have the correct minute volume, we have to breathe a much bigger breath. So with an obstructive lung like asthma, you want to have 0 PEEP, so no positive end expiratory pressure. You're wanting to have a high tidal volume, so we're not going to be breathing fast, we're just taking big breaths. Because we're taking big breaths, we can breathe slower. Because we're breathing slower, we can allow for proper exhalation. So the IE ratio, so the time it takes me to inhale and the time it takes me to exhale, I want a ratio of like 1 to 4. So for every second I breathe in, I want 4 seconds to breathe out. That gives me more time to exhale. Those are the two basic lung strategies. Remember that oxygenation and ventilation are separate. So even with a obstructive lung, you still want to make sure that the patient is getting enough oxygen, but the problem will not be oxygenation, the problem will be ventilation. All right, hope that was good. Hope you guys enjoyed that. There'll be a quick quiz at the bottom. Leave any questions or comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching.